What is up, Nerf herders? We are back.
Up.
I had food poisoning, so we did not do a lot in the last the last week or so.
Sorry to hear it, but I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, no, I survived. I did
That's
survive.
good. Good.
And COVID was the thing everybody was worried about, and I'm like, I got complacent and got food poisoning. Worked out great.
It happens. Happens to the best of us.
In the meantime, you held down the fort. You had some videos coming out, and a lot happened. Like we've got a good amount of stuff to talk about. And I actually watched a movie in a reasonable time frame from its release to where we can talk about it and it's in its full context instead of you having to dodge spoilers for me.
Yeah, you did.
So I couldn't do anything but sit down on the couch and get up to go to the bathroom every half hour. So, I'm gonna watch a movie. Let's
That's go for it. Great. Yeah.
So I had plenty of time to think about it throughout the film. The 2-hour watch time was like 3 hours roughly for me. Stop and go. But speaking of movies and watching movies, you did a watch through for the X-Men in celebration of the 30th anniversary.
20th.
20th
anniversary came out yesterday, July 14th,
I was freaking out for a sec.
1990. No, 2000. Yeah, no, that would have been 30th. It came out in 2000, the year 2000, July 14th. 20 years ago from yesterday. It's crazy, man.
I was gonna say for a second, even I caught myself. I was like, "There's no way I'm that old. No way I'm that old already."
Yeah.
But yeah, and so you watched the original X-Men movie, the first one, the one that kicked off the superhero film genre. Really, if you really want to get down to it.
See, I feel like okay, so I wanted to have a brief discussion of that with you because a lot of people are saying that, and I think it was one of the. I mean, it's clearly the 20th Century Fox X-Men franchise was a pretty epic. What am I trying to say? Marvel Cinematic Universe before the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, it's got several films to that franchise. It came out before Spider-Man. It lasted through 3 different changes of Spider-Man. So that's how long it lasted.
Well, and at the same time, it also went through several changes in characters and a bunch of timeline fuckery that
it did. But they attempted to make it work. And I'm not saying that it did work because it didn't a lot. And it was crazy because some of the mistakes that they made were the same writers were involved, which is strange. But it's pretty impressive for what it was. And however, I would say that 2 years before X-Men came out, Blade 1 came out. And granted, the Blade franchise did not turn into something as big as X-Men, but Blade presented you a Marvel comic book character in an R-rated format that did fairly well. People took it seriously. It was well received. I think that X-Men was probably... X-Men and Blade probably started production around the same time, but I think Blade gave a lot of people confidence. When you think of Marvel Vampire Hunter, who's also a vampire based on a comic book, that doesn't spell a lot of confidence, but I think it did really well. And then it had its own trilogy. And I think Blade wasn't as monumental as X-Men, but it deserves some of the credit for really pushing us into modern, acceptable, serious tries at comic book material.
So I want to agree partially because yes, it is a Marvel property and it deserves, credit where credit is due. But I don't know that we can call Blade the catalyst for really getting that superhero stuff going because Blade doesn't come across as quite the superhero as we would recognize him now. And vampire stuff in general was huge during that time. I had to actually look it up because I remember Buffy the Vampire Slayer being huge around that time. Because the first episode was in 97 for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And it was part of that era where stuff like that was really starting to kick off. And also it's the standalone well, I guess aside from Logan and Deadpool, it's the standalone R-rated film all the way up until those recent R-rated films. And so it was occupying a complete, like what really felt like a completely different space. And I don't know. I did not know that Blade was a Marvel character for the longest time. Like I knew that it was made by Marvel, but I didn't know that he was like an established like long form comic book character. Um, but yeah,
Well, I
I
don't
think
think that
X-Men
it.
really shine. I think X-Men is what really got the superhero genre a lot more popular because we're working with more traditional superheroes. The X-Men cartoon was also very popular at those times, and so they were
Mhm.
tapping into a very familiar market already with the
Animated series. Oh yes,
yes,
I loved it.
with a lot of the familiar characters as well. So I mean, you're like you weren't dealing with any like crazy unfamiliar territory as far as getting these in there.
Sure.
And Patrick Stewart was also insanely popular at the time.
Well, I mean, yeah, he
But
came
there's
off of Jean-Luc Picard to another iconic role. Props
yeah,
to him and props to his agent.
you had
Um,
Halle Berry in there as well.
yeah, Holly
Uh,
Berry was hot at the time. This was before her Catwoman stint.
yeah, Ian McKellen. I don't think had Sir Ian McKellen didn't have quite the name recognition yet at the
Maybe not
time.
globally. Maybe not globally. Yeah.
Not yet, because I believe Lord of the Rings was after.
hmm
I'm pretty
hmm
positive Lord of the Rings was after X
It
Men
was.
by 1 or 2 years,
Yeah,
roughly.
not too far after.
And it wasn't much. Um, but yeah, there's some big name draw. Brett it was Brett Ratner, wasn't it? Who put the film together?
No, Brett Ratner was part three. It was
Part
Brian
three.
Singer.
Right. Brian
Brian
Singer.
Singer
Okay,
put
yeah.
it. And
Um,
granted, his name is associated with some unfortunate things now compared to back then. But I think
well,
X
so is
Men.
Ratner's.
Yeah, that's true. X Men. It definitely in the eyes of the audience, I think it was monumental for superhero films. I think when I was thinking of Blade, I was more thinking of studio confidence because I saw a studio put confidence in that film, and I think that gave hope to other studios that if an R-rated obscure comic book character could do well, then these other franchises, if they gave them a little more thought and effort than Batman and Robin, then it could go big. And props to 20th Century Fox. They beat Sony out of the gate. They beat everybody out of the gate, and they put out X-Men in 2000. And yeah, it
And
did
then they
wonders.
dropped the ball with the last stand and it went all downhill from there.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
all downhill, but yeah, it was a rough road ahead for sure.
But X-Men is actually, besides the 20th year anniversary, it's actually in our news to talk about this week, which I
Oh,
thought was really interesting. Um, we've had this conversation before this week about Disney Plus and what they have been going back and kind of censoring with a lot of their older films, especially some of those 80s films that might have had an F-bomb in there for a really low rating, but it had an F-bomb or it had some nudity or something like that. Well, Disney has held by their stance that, hey, we are a family film streaming network here on Disney Plus, and they've censored what they wanted to censor, except for this week uh, when they dropped X-Men: Days of Future Past. Why isn't this going to X-Men: Days of Future Past? There we go. Yeah, I don't know if you remember, this movie has an F bomb in it, and it has full on Hugh Jackman ass.
I mean, if you really want to get crowds in there,
Yeah.
like, hey, we need some numbers on Disney Plus, and unlike HBO Max, they've got boobs. Like, we need need some appeal. Let's throw some Australian ass up into the mix.
Yeah.
Um, well, first of all, I don't think that anybody should be terribly frightened of an ass showing up in a movie that had the rating that this one did. I mean, at PG
hmm
13, like honestly, like it's kind of funny to have Disney be like trying to claim like the high horse of morality,
hmm
especially given their past. um, so honestly, for me, it was just like, you know what? Yeah, they were like kind of turned around. They're like, you know what? We're dealing with a. I know it sounds weird to say because it doesn't seem like the case, but we're dealing with a more mature uh, audience now than we would have been. Who knows how long ago? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not that sensitive of a topic now, and honestly, they've got the numbers to where if the Karens decided to get up in arms, well, first of all, they wouldn't because the Karens are looking at this scene mad that we have the uncensored tag over his ass right now. Um, but yeah, like if they got up in arms, I don't think that it would cut enough into Disney's bottom line to where like, yeah, we're gonna censor this stuff. And there was I remember seeing more outrage about it being censored than anything about it being uncensored. So
Well, I think just people are just kind of, because Hugh Jackman put out this tweet saying Days of Future Past becomes the first movie to air on Disney Plus uncensored, and I think just with all of the the things that they have decided to censor, the fact that they left this one and not just the male ass part. I mean, what was the movie that they extended the person's hair to cover her butt when she went back?
Splash.
Splash, was it? I mean, so that's an example of nudity, but the fact that they also left the F bomb in here, which is another thing that has yet to happen on Disney Plus. This is the only movie with an F bomb in the movie on Disney Plus right now. Um,
Well,
which is interesting.
let's say it's the only movie that's uncensored that had the opportunity to be censored in the first place because a lot of the rest of their films censorship probably wasn't even an issue that that they would have had to consider.
But they have gone back and censored a lot. I mean, they've either fixed some things or censored some things. I mean, not F bombs, but well, no, I think they have. I think Adventures in Babysitting, they went back and censored some F bombs that were
Yeah,
in that film.
there were two F bombs straight up in that one that they cut out. So and that was
So they
sad.
did do it. Yeah.
I love one of the comments that we've gotten so far from Doug Holmes. Like that was not America's ass. I was like,
Are you sure, Doug? Are you sure? Because if Disney Plus is supporting it, I'm just saying. Uh, well, yeah,
that's
it's
Australia's ass.
Australia's ass right there. Yeah, or in comic land, it's Canada's ass because that's what
Yeah,
Wolverine's
yeah.
origin is. But yeah, so interesting. So I wonder, if they just. I also found it interesting that they released it this week, obviously in recognition of the 20th year anniversary of X-Men. But this must be the only film that they currently have the streaming rights for because it's the only X-Men film on Disney Plus right now.
Yeah, and we talked about that on the podcast before, to where there's certain properties that they haven't like some of those films have actually uh have been on other streaming sites already or are probably going through like premium cable channel movie packages like Stars, Cinemax, HBO, stuff like that. And so they haven't quite run out like certain contracts that they've probably signed for those. So I mean,
Sure.
it'll be a matter of time before they pop in, and then still, as I've predicted and as has been happening, they will be on their streaming platform for a little bit, and then when they see that the numbers start to dip, they'll throw them back up on premium channels again, or they'll or like you're still going to see them airing on regular TV. You'll see them on like I think TNT is a really popular one for the X-Men films. Might even see it on some of like the Fox owned movie FXX, which is another one.
Right.
I mean, we had the same issue. I mean, it took a while before Infinity War showed up on Disney Plus because Netflix still had it for a little while.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so yeah, it'll just a matter of time, really, before the rest of the X-Men films show up on there. How long? I don't know, but
Right.
this is just the start.
Well, I wonder if it's also the start for other things being allowed on Disney Plus because I mean,
I
James
hope so.
McAvoy his epic F bomb in this film is censored on most cable channels. So the fact that it's not censored on Disney Plus is intriguing. So we'll see what comes from that. But yeah.
First of all, I think if I'm paying for a service like a private streaming service, one that is not open to the public. Like for something like this, I don't think you should censor anything.
Mm-hmm.
I want the content in its original format. First of all, I'll tell you 100% now that Disney will get buku bucks if they decided to put like the theatrical versions of Star Wars up on there. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
let's just do that. Like, you guys own it now. You don't have to listen to what I don't know if they'd have to listen to what George Lucas put in later, but
Mm-hmm.
like maybe just like the original theatrical audio.
Right.
That's my
Another
biggest beef.
another property that they acquired from 20th Century Fox.
Exactly.
But
There,
again, those were family films already. I think I honestly think the only reason this is on Disney Plus is because it's the superhero genre. Because they've acquired so many films from 20th Century Fox that are PG-13 or R that will probably never see Disney Plus unless they somehow end up creating a tier. But for the longest time, we've always just assumed if it's not family friendly, it's going to go on Hulu or some other platform. But I guess we'll see. I think the fact that this is a superhero film is what got it in there.
well, I don't think any streaming service that has the entire run of The Simpsons on it should be censoring out an ass or a single
That's
F
true.
bomb out of anything. Like,
That's true.
like that's a little bit backwards. Then again, I haven't watched through any of The Simpsons on Disney Plus to see if there's anything changed there. Like, who knows? Maybe
There's
that's
hundreds of
oh
hours of
my
episodes.
god,
It
the
probably
amount of
happened.
content I'd have to go through would be insane.
Yeah.
I can tell you though that the two F bombs that are dropped in Adventures in Babysitting, they're like, it's a funny moment. Like, it's not out of place.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't just throw it in there because they could. I mean, they kind of did, but it made
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like, it's said by like a ruthless gang member in in a moment where he's trying to intimidate one of the protagonists,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's said by one of the like it's a funny scene. Like, it's a funny moment.
Yeah.
And it fits the context.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they should edit that out. First of all, like if they're worried about kids being ruined by anything that they would see on Disney Plus, they need to believe at the same time that this child lives in a world where he doesn't have access to literally any other websites of any
Yeah.
kind.
Sure.
It's like, I mean, the average kid nowadays spends 5 minutes in a Fortnite game or in any Call of Duty or any video game lobby for that matter. They're going to hear 10 times worse than they're going to hear on anything that Disney has acquired. So
Mm-hmm.
why bother?
Right.
Why bother? Just give it to us in its original format.
I agree. Well, I know we got some other topics to talk about, but since we are in the 20th anniversary week of X-Men, and Disney has acquired X-Men, and we all know eventually it's going to happen. They're going to bring their own version of X-Men. I thought it'd be fun to chat with you about our fan casting, and I put yours up first. So,
Well, it's
yeah,
great. It's a great moment for them to do it because the Marvel Cinematic Universe just had its first real era. The Infinity Saga is
true.
now over, and so they need to bring in some new stuff. And personally, I think that one of the big villains that has not had justice done to him, at least in the film genre, that acquiring 20th Century Fox will allow them to do, one would be Galactus, who is an incredible villain, but also Doctor Doom.
Dr. Doom,
Uh,
indeed. Yes.
the It's weird to have like the Civil War that they had gone through without any of the X-Men, because the X-Men were a big part of the Civil
Sure.
War comic line. There were a lot of them involved in that.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of stuff there. The Sentinels that the X-Men deal with, there's a lot of stuff that they can play with that
Mm-hmm.
20th Century Fox owned, and so it's a really good time to bring them in there. We did decide to do our own fan casting choices, and I was happy to be informed that you and I kind of like synced up on several of them. But
Mm-hmm.
honestly, it was kind of hard, um, some of the characters you're like, I don't want to replace them. They've still got the potential to do so good and to like be put into the full Marvel Cinematic Universe. Is like, I almost want to give them another shot because they've played with the timelines enough already as it is. It's like, why wouldn't we just go with it?
Yeah, I thought it was hard to replace all of them, but also B, more than a couple times, someone that I thought would be great for a role was already in the MCU, and not in a
Yep.
small role, and I was like, gosh darn it. And I tried to be faithful to that because sure, Disney could do their own X-Men universe, but I think most people would be like, you have the MCU, put them in MCU. So I think me and you both went with people that weren't already in the MCU, but I want to put yours up first.
That
And
was
we
that
did
was that was a hard part for me too. It's
right.
just like I would think of a character and then forget that he either had
Hmm.
um well, first of all, the amount of characters that I thought Idris Elba could play uh,
Oh, sure.
came up, but then I was like fucking Heimdall. Like
I know. But
like
he's great as
it
Heimdall. He's
happened for like
great.
multiple characters in the X-Men universe. I'm just like shit,
Yeah.
I can't use him for any of that.
Right.
And yeah, that drove me nuts. And then there's also characters who there were also actors who I would like to see who've already been announced for future Marvel products that we haven't
Exactly.
even seen
Yes.
yet. And so
Yes.
that became a huge pain in the ass.
Yes.
So it's just the problem that we deal with the vastness of the MCU right now.
Mhm, mhm. Well, we did most of the characters from the first X-Men film, and we picked 8 characters. So I split them into 2 slides. So these are your 3. Now the only real caveat here is you said that they shouldn't go with a replacement for Wolverine right away. They should go with X-23. So I put the X-23 actress up there. That's not really who you said, but let's
Yeah,
talk through
no.
these.
So I'll address Laura Kinney like right away. Like I said, we're dealing with different timelines. We're also dealing
Mhm,
with a set of franchises that Disney could completely ignore happened. They could just
mhm,
say that the X-Men in those iterations did not happen. They're not
mhm,
part of our canon, and they just throw them in there. That could totally be the direction that they go. We haven't had we haven't really had any major teasers or any major connections to any of the events in the previous films. And so
sure.
they could really tie these into whenever they want. And
Mhm,
Marvel and Feige and his team, they're not strangers to making these changes. I think instead of trying to replace somebody who is as iconic as his character, like replacing Hugh Jackman as Wolverine would be like trying to replace Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man now. It'd be hard to picture anybody else playing that character. Like
mhm,
it'd be really, really tough. I mean, it's hard enough not picturing Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen as Professor Xavier and Magneto. Like it's a difficult thing because that was our first iteration of them in the film world that I was introduced to, and it's really weird seeing other. Like, I mean, it was really weird seeing McAvoy and Fassbender in those roles. I think they did a good job with what they had. Um,
I think they did too. But that is props to 20th Century Fox
yeah,
for having faith and continuing that franchise cuz X-Men came out 20 years ago and we're still saying now that the characters in that film are hard to replace. So
yeah.
that is
Well,
props not only to that but also to that universe that they continue to build on.
to be fair, they repeated those characters in those roles
Yeah,
for
in the
quite a while too.
universe.
So
But I mean, they had faith in a film that came out 20 years ago. Iron Man 1 didn't come out 20 years ago. It came out, what, 12 or 11?
so my justification for actually ditching the current X-Men canon is because we know so much about what happens already, and there'd be
Mhm.
way too much explaining they would have to do as far as the timelines that have been split off and messed with in those films. So I think they should start
Agreed.
fresh,
Yeah.
which and not necessarily with Laura Kinney, who was the original who was the actress for X-23 in Logan, but the character of X-23 instead of Wolverine being introduced like right away.
Mhm.
Try and play around with that. I mean, like I said, there's a lot that they can do with it. Um, Jeremy Irons, I think, would absolutely crush Professor Xavier's role. I think he would
Mhm.
kill it. And to my knowledge, he's not in any other Marvel properties at the current moment. So
He's in some DC properties, but
he's in a
yeah.
lot of DC properties. But first of all, like a lot of the connection with like Professor Xavier like is hearing his voice telepathically and Jeremy
Mm,
Irons has got a great voice for something like that.
true,
And so
true,
and
very
so and
true.
like that's a big part of his power is kind of that communication. And also Patrick Stewart also kind of narrated uh or somewhat narrated the series. Like it was a
Oh
it
yeah,
was a
his
very
voice
dialogue
was
heavy film.
influential. Yes.
And so you
Yep.
really want like classically trained actors to take over that.
Hmm.
Which is also why I thought Christoph Waltz would make a great Magneto. Because first of all, because he's an incredible actor, but he is also, I believe, he's also of German heritage, which would match up with Eric in the comics.
Hmm.
I'm actually going to look that up. Christoph
Well, he was.
Waltz,
Oh, you're gonna look. I was gonna
Austrian
say. I
German,
mean, we know.
Austrian German. So
Yeah, that region.
yeah, so yeah, that's a. I think trying to like keep with first of all, I don't think that we should be straight up just ignoring comic book character backstories or origins if it is a big reason for why they are the way that they are. And they like there was a lot of talk about Denzel Washington taking over the spot of Magneto.
Hmm.
And I know that black people were also subjected to horrible things during the Holocaust, but it's not the immediate thing you think of when you hear Holocaust, and that is a big part of Eric Lyncher's Magneto's backstory is him going through the Holocaust, is him losing his family, him being in internment camps, and going through all that. That's a big part of his character, and it's a big part of his reasonings against the human race. And
Yeah, I think most people that wanted Denzel, um, and were kind of thinking of the that Professor X was pretty much Martin Luther King and Magneto was Malcolm X, and they a lot of the reasoning was, well, if we continue to do this now, these guys would be so old if they lived back in the times of the Holocaust. So that was a lot of people's reasoning was, well, they
yeah,
let's just get rid of that whole thing. And I understand the convenience of that, but yeah, it's such a huge part of Magneto's background. I would hate to lose that richness to his character. Not to say you couldn't replicate that in someone with a different background, but
oh,
yeah,
playing it with Denzel Washington. I mean, first of all, you're dealing with the subjugation of the entire black race in
right,
America. Like he would absolutely understand that level of uh, complete disrespect for any authority trying to claim superiority of any kind, but
sure,
also like, but it would
like a
also be kind of
Killmonger
weird him
situation,
tapping
yeah,
into, yeah, but it would also be weird him trying to tap into that mutant supremacy at the same time, because that was a little bit the hypocrisy that Magneto had was kind of part of his character flaws as well. And so
hmm.
I think Denzel could absolutely pull it off, but I think Christoph Waltz would be a really good fit for Magneto.
Doug Holmes is saying, not while we're talking about fan casting, he's also thinking that they need to find a way to incorporate more comic accurate costumes. It works for Captain America and Magneto's helmet. I think people would accept these looks rather than everyone in black leather or muted street clothes. I think that is a valid point, especially since that was a big kind of thing in the first movie of what do you want, yellow spandex, and I think there was a time where we didn't want comic accurate looks, but then we had Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and we had a lot of the comic accurate esque looks in MCU. I think we could get away with something that was more closer to the original comic looks.
They certainly
But
need to give it like a modern feel, and so
yeah,
like they need to be able to find a way to um, make that make sense. Because
sure.
honestly, like I don't care who plays Wolverine if they show up in this particular costume, like his classic yellow and black.
Hmm.
It's 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 gonna break me out of that immersion. I'm sorry, like
I think there's a way to modernize it while paying homage,
yeah,
than just black leather like the original X-Men did. I think the MCU has brought us a long way in
yeah.
terms of designs. Here's the rest of your casting. Why don't you walk us through this?
Well, so John Krasinski and Emily Blunt playing Cyclops and Jean Grey was kind of a joke, but also not really. Because I know that John Krasinski was actually being looked at for a lot of different Marvel roles as they were going on. I think he was being looked at for the Human Torch at one point. I don't know if he still is.
I think more people want him as Mr. Fantastic nowadays.
Yeah. But honestly, I couldn't really think of a generic male actor who'd be, because that's really what we're going for.
That's
well, that's who Scott Summers was. Like he was regular. Like he's a dude. Like he's
a dude.
He's a male leading. He's a leader. He's like that's kind of who he goes for. And I think John Krasinski could play it really well. And then the chemistry of Cyclops and Jean Grey could be toyed with quite a lot with his wife playing the role of Jean Grey.
Sure.
Emily Blunt also, like, she's nobody to sneer at. Like, she's an incredible actress. Like, she does really good work. And I think she could rock red hair without it looking completely freaky or unnatural. Then I put Natalya Dyer in for Rogue, mainly because, like, Rogue, I think the original X-Men film did a good job at playing her as a very young character, a very young, a very naive character. She's kind of scared. She's just gotten into this, and I think Natalya would be able to play that really well. Nancy from Stranger Things, for those who didn't immediately recognize her. I think she could play it really well. I think the big thing that they need to make sure to do is give her a good Southern accent, because that was not something that the
Sookie Stackhouse,
Anna Paquin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, there really wasn't any of that. It wasn't really strong, and Rogue has a pretty thick Southern accent. And so, like, that'd be something to stick in there. But she could play the rebellious Southern teenager pretty well. And
I think so too. Yeah.
And then I have Kiki Lane as a Storm. Now, I know that like, we have some relation as to my recognition of her just based off of the movie review we're about to do. But my first choice was Lupita Nyong'o, and she is already in Black Panther, so she's already established in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that's like, honestly, Black Panther stole a lot of really dynamite Black actresses that I was immediately familiar with, that I thought would have been able to play the role really, really well. But the interesting thing is that Kiki Lane is actually pushing for the role, and she wants to push for the role in a way that I think fits really good. She wants Storm to basically be a goddess, which she really is. Like, the level of power that Storm has literally at her fingertips is insane. And yeah, that was something that they definitely hinted towards, or like, they made it clear how powerful Storm was in the original X-Men franchise, but they never really did as much with it as she is known to do. Storm is insanely powerful, and in the comic book, she has done some batshit crazy stuff on grand, massive scales, and we haven't really gotten to see that. And so it'd be really cool to have her, like, somebody who is really pushing for the role in that way. Like, I would imagine that she is familiarizing herself with her character very much so. And I think that would be pretty sweet. And then Charlize Theron as Mystique. She was honestly the first one that stuck out in my mind as a strong female stunt actress, because she has been doing a lot in the action genre. Like, a lot lately.
Movie we're going to talk about later on today.
Yeah. Well, that one too, but it was also the one that we talked about last podcast. It was her, like, the work that she did in Mad Max.
Yeah. You're
and
right.
and like the difficulty with Mystique is that she's not playing she's never just playing Mystique. She's always playing the role of multiple people. And then the other actors in the film who Mystique ends up doppelganging as have to try and change the way that they act as well. And so it's that dynamic that the original X-Men film did pretty well already.
Sure.
But I'd want to see I don't know, now that we have the technology for not having to do full blue body makeup and like put Rebecca Romijn through like 8 hours a day of makeup application, who knows? Like Charlize Theron was the first like action star actress that came to mind. Just because like she's putting a lot of effort into that right now. And Mystique is, as we know,
she's
she's
succeeding in it.
she's succeeding in it. But Mystique is very acrobatic. She's very good with hand-to-hand combat. Like that's something that would want to be iterated.
And at least in the first movies, she had a commanding presence, and Charlize Theron really does sell that well. She has a confidence in herself. She has a stature when she, she doesn't look fragile. She doesn't look weak. She doesn't look like she second guesses anything. And yeah, that's a great casting. Charlize would be perfect for that.
Then again, I think Charlize could play a lot of different roles
She could.
in the MCU that we haven't seen yet. So it's
we could have gone down a long line if we did anything past these, but yeah,
that's kind of the thing. Like it's a difficult thing to do because there are so many characters that so many actors and actresses that I'm familiar with could play really well. But it really comes down to like, and honestly, the actor's interest plays a much bigger role into it than the fans' interest in the character playing or in the actor playing that. Like
it plays a huge role.
Yeah, I want an actor who really wants to get in, for that character.
Well, that was a lot of the criticism of the last two X-Men movies was that Jennifer, what's her name? Jennifer Lawrence didn't seem like she was in it. A lot of people were like, does she even really want to be here? And that's never a criticism you want from an audience member or a critic, was the actor didn't seem like they wanted to be there. So yeah, even more than fan casting, I agree, you need someone that wants it.
Yeah, I mean that's especially for something like this where the bar is set so high in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as far as like, and comic fans are angry fans when stuff goes wrong. Like they're not a bunch that you want to get grumpy.
Well, I know we have other topics to talk about, but I'll run through mine right quick. I said that I would like to see Jason Isaacs as Professor X. I think he is a very great actor. I think he also has a very commanding presence and a voice that when I close my eyes, he's great. I remember him playing both the dad and Hook in Peter Pan. One of the Peter Pan remakes. He was both the Wendy's dad, and then he was also Hook, and I thought he did really well as those two characters. Or was that in Hook? No, that wasn't Hook. That was Peter Pan. I chose Viggo Mortensen as Magneto. I think he's a fantastic actor. I think he has a reserve about himself, but I think when he wants to, he can have crazy eyes. He can look like he has a demon inside of him, and he can act like it. And he can kind of flip that switch really well. And I could see him being, that person in this role. And then, I know it's I wanted to say somebody for Wolverine, even if I agree maybe it's not the best idea to have him in the first film, but they're going to do it eventually. And I thought of Travis Fimmel. I just recently finished all of Vikings, or at least all of Vikings so far, and he was amazing as Ragnar in Vikings. I thought he was vicious. I think he hasn't been given enough opportunities. He was amazing in that movie or in that show. They tried to bring him to the big screen in the World of Warcraft movie. Sadly, that movie didn't take off. I thought it was decent, and I thought he was one of the better parts of that movie. But I think he also has a lot of drive when it comes to acting. He's just got a lot to him that I saw. He did great job emoting when he was on Vikings, and I think he could bring a lot to the role. So that was my Wolverine. Any thoughts on these three?
I am 100% on board with Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah.
Uh, like, like, man, I can't believe I didn't even think of him being in there.
Mm-hmm.
But um, Vigo would be incredible. I'm
Yeah.
not terribly familiar with the Vikings series because,
Mm-hmm.
like, I watched through a couple episodes and it didn't grab me right away.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not terribly familiar with him. But Jason Isaacs, I'm also good for. That would be, yeah. I'm straight up on board with these. Vigo especially.
Talking about running into issues casting, my first choice actually was Mads Mikkelsen. And then for
Yeah.
Magneto, I think he would be a fantastic Magneto. And then I was
Damn it,
like,
can I
oh,
see
damn
this?
it. Yeah, he was in Doctor Strange. So yeah, which he was great in that. But I would love to see Vigo in this role. For the rest of them, I actually agreed on a couple of yours. Uh, and Talia Dyer for Rogue. I think she's perfect. I like the idea of still keeping her younger than the main cast. I actually thought of Jamie Dornan for Cyclops. Most people probably know him from 50 Shades, but he was also in a miniseries called The Fall, and he knows how to play a charmer, but also like a person with some edge to him. And I think that is vital to them rebranding Cyclops, because Cyclops is like the Red Ranger. A lot of people have a lot of love for him, but they hate that he gets put aside all the time for the Green Ranger, or in
Yeah.
X-Men terms for Wolverine. There's a lot of great stuff out there for Cyclops, and James Marsden was perfect casting in my opinion. He just didn't get a lot of content to work with. And so I feel like you need somebody with some roughness to him, and that can play some edge. And I think Dornan would be great for that. Honestly, I agree with you on Storm. I think she could work, but she wasn't my first choice. My first choice is actually Lashonna Lynch. Um,
Okay.
she she is coming out in the new Bond movie, and she looks like a badass in that. Unfortunately, again, she's already been in the MCU. She was
Yeah,
in
she
the
was.
Captain Marvel movie.
Yeah, she was.
Unfortunately, as such a small throwaway character, which I know that she's a bigger character in the comics, but it didn't seem like they were leaning towards that at all in the movie. I mean, maybe they'll change their mind. My only problem with Kiki is that Kiki is in her 20s and Chadwick Boseman is in his 40s. And in a lot of comics arcs, Storm and Black Panther kind of have a thing. And a lot of people want that.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean I want Beyonce to play Storm, but yeah, I feel like I'm worried about an actress that looks too young. Granted, she doesn't look like a teenager, but I'm worried. If they ever go down that route, I would feel like Storm would need to be older or older looking.
I
Granted, they could
really,
easily make Kiki look older.
I really don't want Beyonce to play Storm. I
Have
don't
you seen
like
all the rumors? Like, people are actively saying, "Don't do this."
like it's just she's not an actress. Like she's just not. Like
Yeah.
we don't need you diving into that. Like give her a cameo. If she wants to be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe so bad, give her a cameo of some kind, but don't give her a
Yes.
main role. Like
Yeah.
fuck's sake.
Don't I mean, she is prestigious, she is an icon in real life, but that doesn't mean she's an actress, and I wouldn't want them to waste a great character by doing a by casting like that. Put a great actress into that role. But yeah, like you said, a lot of the Black community has already been cast in Black Panther, and I think that is a bigger issue here because I had no problem finding white actresses, because there's so many. There's honestly not a lot of Black actresses out there. It's a very small amount, and I think maybe Hollywood should broaden that
Well,
category a bit. But it
it's
doesn't
even
help
worse
that so
because
many of them were casted in Black Panther.
it's even worse because there are a lot of really talented Black actresses, but there are not so many that they're gaining the attention to get into a franchise this big.
Yeah.
That really sucks. And I would be perpetuating this, but one of my alternates, one of the first people that came to mind for Storm was actually Viola Davis.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah.
For kind of the same reason that you were talking about, where it's like, yeah, Storm is an older character. If we're going to fall in line with the timeline that where uh, Black Panther is currently
Sure.
occupying.
Now they don't have to go that route, but I was thinking of that,
No,
when I was trying to cast it. My other two here, Evan Rachel Wood for Jean Grey. She's been great in Westworld. She has a confidence to her, but she also has a craziness to her that she can unleash. And she definitely unleashes that in Westworld. She shows a fragile side to her, but then when she gets pissed, she shows a very violent, very catastrophic side to her, and that's exactly what Jean Grey is. So I think she would be fantastic in the role.
and she
Um,
could talk to James Marsden for tips.
exactly,
Like they're
exactly,
closely connected too, so it works
right.
out.
And then
Is that it?
Mystique, I thought Olivia Wilde would be great. I think you need somebody that um, has a fierceness, has a I I was always disappointed in the way they portrayed Mystique in the later films with Jennifer Lawrence, because the Mystique that I grew up with hated humans. She was a villain. I mean, when you dug into her past, she probably had things that made her sympathetic, but she was violent and she was angry and she was a killer. And
Yeah.
I feel like, gosh, I hope Disney brings that back. I don't need the same people who are writing Maleficent to write Mystique. I want a villain in Mystique, and I think Olivia Wilde could not only bring the sex appeal to the character, but bring the craziness to the character, because she's very agile. She's done action roles in the past, but she's also done roles where she's stretched her emotions a bit and shown some crazy sides to her, and I think she could fill that role really well.
Yep. I'm on board. I also think Jamie Dornan would be an okay pick because they need to get more ladies into the into the MCU. I was like, all
Sure.
right, we're gonna get some more dudes in there, so we're gonna get the guy from literally the worst book adaptation of recent memory. Like,
Well, was it the worst book adaptation or just the worst book to adapt?
maybe
Because
both. Like,
because
fucking,
I don't
like,
know, man. I feel like a lot of people really like that adaptation, but it,
dude,
it didn't help that the source material was terrible.
I watched like 45 minutes of the first movie, and I was just like, done. This is so bad.
It
It was
wasn't
such
made for you, Seth. You know it wasn't made for
no,
you.
no, it wasn't. But even the people who were into it didn't like it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Well, do you want to move
anyway,
on?
yeah, let's jump into a quick lightning round, and then we got to review the old guard.
Okay.
Because we've got a few things. I found some topics that were pretty interesting, but like I said, we're gonna go lightning rounds. We're gonna go quicker than we normally do because uh, we've had a few lightning rounds where they're supposed to be fast, but we end up staying on it for a little bit longer than we should.
Sure, sure.
So I've only got three things right off the bat. First one is comic news. DC announced this afternoon that they have a new Rorschach comic series that they're going to
Hmm.
be coming out with. And so if you haven't gotten enough Watchmen based off of a lot of the content that we've gotten, and you also want to read a comic based off of arguably one of the most interesting characters in the franchise, you got a comic series coming your way, which is going to be really sweet.
Did they
That's
say
coming.
what imprint? Did they say if it was Black Label or anything like that?
The spinoff from Tom King and Jorge Fornes is based on the character from Alan Moore's Watchmen comic book. It arrives October 13th. It's 12 issues.
Well, I mean, if you don't see Black Label in there, then I assume that they're going to do it on their regular label, which is interesting. I would think that would be grounds for more R-rated material, but maybe not.
I am not seeing anything specifically stating if it's going to be on Black Label or not.
Interesting. Well, yeah, it's exciting for sure.
It'll be released digitally and in stores on October 13th, and 35 years after the events of the original graphic novel.
Wait, what? 35 years?
Yeah.
Didn't he die at the end of the original graphic novel?
They put it in here. Rorschach centers on the inexplicable reemergence of the title character,
Okay.
the costume vigilante who was last seen meeting his death.
All right. Well,
So yeah,
we'll see how that works.
it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they go with for that. We got some tech news. Twitter got hacked today. So we saw a lot of verified users and some big names. We got Barack Obama, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and Joe Biden. A bunch of others were tweeting. We're seeing tweeting out a Bitcoin scam, and it was found out that there was a hack that was targeting specifically verified Twitter users with big followings. And so in response, Twitter blocked them from tweeting until they could figure out what happened. So that was hilarious. And of all things, a Bitcoin scam. Yeah, I know. Right?
Way to waste a hack.
I immediately.
How many of Barack Obama's followers do you think are going to be like, "Oh my God, now is the time to get onto Bitcoin"?
Oh man. Then some COVID news. Walmart announced today that it is the latest major retailer to require that customers wear masks at stores.
Yeah, it starts on July 20th, right?
Yes. And honestly, I don't care. Well, first of all, I don't shop at Walmart because I have a grocery store that's much closer to me that sells everything that I would need. Mm-hmm. And then as far as like anything not grocery, there's a hardware store immediately close to me as well. And there's also a Target. So it's like I'm not their target market, just based off of logistics. Mm-hmm. But also I really don't feel like being forced to wear a mask is going to be that big a deal, but we're hitting a huge population of the country with this one. And so we're going to see this isn't the last that we're going to see in this news. It's going to flare up with a lot of people now.
We've already seen it because this is a Walmart mandate across the U.S., but in some states like Florida, they've already had this rule in place. In fact, there's a very viral video of an old white guy just shoving the Walmart employee aside, saying, "I'm not going to wear a mask," and the Walmart employee continuing to chase him through the store, saying, "You need to leave," and he just continues to shove this employee aside. I feel we've already seen a lot of Karens freaking out about this at Trader Joe's and at other places. But hey, let's face it. It's either we close down these big box stores, which we just can't do, or we do whatever we can to make them safer. So, we've already seen a few states make it mandatory for any indoor public place to have masks. So there's a couple of them that have just jumped to that level. So good on Walmart for doing something that is in the public's best interest for once.
Honestly, yeah. And I mean, you can get into the conspiracies if you want to our listeners, but if wearing a mask is going to be the most oppressive thing that you can think of, you're not paying attention to the rest of the population right now.
Really not. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's about it for the lightning round. There's some other stuff, but not really a lot. I'm like, oh man, we need to talk about this because I want to blow through this because I want to talk about the old guard like really bad.
This could be a lightning round. Just that HBO Max has committed a Gotham PD series that will be a spinoff of Matt Reeves' Batman.
And I heard like I'm torn because I didn't hate Gotham.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Gotham series was good, but this also sounds like it's going to be in a completely different like vein.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite comic series. It was called Gotham Central. And when Gotham, the show, was first announced, everybody thought it was going to be this, which was a series based on Gordon and his unit dealing with all the crime and all the villains. And every once in a while, you had a cameo from Batman, but you really got to see the human side of Gotham. Gotham, the TV show, just turned into a prepubescent Batman prequel, and it failed on a lot of those accounts. I liked parts of Gotham, but my favorite parts dealt with Gordon and not
Yep.
with Batman. So to see HBO Max commit to this and then also commit to Matt Reeves means that they're liking something in his movies. So I like that. I wonder if the Commissioner Gordon from Matt Reeves' movie is going to be the Commissioner Gordon in the show. I mean, it wouldn't make sense otherwise, but they haven't necessarily said that yet.
Have we had a casting announcement for that?
Yeah, it's what's his name from Westworld. It is oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name all of a sudden. It's Jeffrey Wright from Westworld.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but so far his name has not come up in terms of this show. So we'll see. And then the other thing is we had another announcement. The Bad Batch is getting its own series,
And I'm stoked.
right?
like out of the last few arcs in season 7, that was like my second favorite.
You didn't want a
Well,
Marquez sister series?
yeah. Yeah, my second favorite out of 2
Yeah.
that I actually liked out of those arcs. No, I'm completely on board. It is kind of weird wanting to see more Clone Wars content after in that era that we've already gotten so much out of.
Right.
But at the same time, I feel like it would also be really cool if these guys like if the series revolved around what they did after Order 66, and they were like, you know what, we're the Bad Batch. We didn't have that chip. We're not on board with any of this shit. And
That's
so
right, because they're all like misfits pretty much. Like
yeah, they're all like misfit mutants. Like honestly, if the rumors got around for getting that chip out of their head got around, these guys would absolutely be like, yeah, we don't want to be controlled
yeah,
in any way.
they wouldn't
Like
second guess that at all. Who was the trooper that joined them at the end? What was his name?
wasn't it Fives?
I think it
No.
was 5. No. Cuz um oh shoot. He's right here in the picture, but I can't remember his name.
Yeah. Oh man. It's hard to remember. It
I
wasn't
wonder if
Fives. It wasn't Fives. Um was it Echo?
yeah, I think it was. I wonder if this Bad Batch is going to be after he joins the group or before. You know, if it's before, then it's during Clone Wars timeline. If it's after, then yeah, it's like you're thinking it would be after Order 66. So I don't know. We could
I would
see.
hope that it would be after. I'd really hope it'd be after because I want to see his character like
Hmm.
in this new element that he's in and see
Yeah,
how he
me
goes
too.
with that.
Me too. We already did lightning round, so yeah, let's talk about The Old Guard, which came out last week on Netflix.
All right.
Uh,
You want to
based
go
on
first?
it's another graphic novel movie, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Based on a graphic novel. Uh,
Let's get our rating out of the way first and then discuss the rating.
okay. Out of 5 stars,
Out of
is
5
that what?
stars, I had a rating out of my head out of 10.
Out of 10 stars?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or just out of
One
10.
other question. Are we rating it as if it's a streaming movie, or are we rating it as if it's a theater movie? Or does that matter in your eyes?
That doesn't make a difference for me, honestly.
Okay.
Um you go first.
I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay. All right. So I was between 6 and 7. I was saying 6.5.
Okay.
So like, and I'll say right off the bat that I did like this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I was entertained by it. There were the things that got on my nerves are uh, are big in the context of the film, but little outside of it. So one of the things that annoyed me the most was actually the music editing. Uh,
You and me both, buddy.
so them deciding to put lyrics into the music, and like they had scenes that almost seemed like they were centralized specifically for that track.
Yeah.
Like the music was supposed to be the thing that you were paying more attention to than what was happening in the movie, and that just it took me out of the film completely. It
Mm.
I turned to Cece as soon as it happened the first time,
Mm-hmm.
which was in, we're gonna talk spoilers, by the way, if you didn't know.
Can,
um
can we talk? Can we talk a portion of this review first before we talk
sure,
spoilers?
sure.
Okay.
So non-spoilery, the music editing really messes with me because of the choice to use lyric music in several scenes,
Yeah.
and it broke immersion for me. I actually turned to Cece the first time it happened, and I said that just broke me out of the movie. Like it
Yeah.
took me out of it completely. It just felt so out of place.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't even like it wouldn't have been a bad like instrumental choice. It was just the fact that it had lyrics in there, and it
Yeah.
was like,
You're not
and
alone there. That can throw people a lot.
well, immediately the first thing you're going to think is like, okay, are these lyrics connected to what's happening in the film somehow? Do I need to be listening to the lyrics? Like it was just it broke me out of it completely.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and so that was harsh. And then the amount of exposition that's in the movie can really like mess with your level of excitement. um
There was a heavy amount, especially around this dude. This dude
yeah,
liked to do a lot of exposition.
but but you're also dealing with a premise that's, there's a lot of questions to answer.
Right.
And so there has to be a lot of exposition. Is just simply the way that they handled it didn't vibe with me too well. But
Mm-hmm.
those were my major complaints that I can talk about without talking spoilers.
I liked it for the most part. It was written by one of my favorite comic authors, Greg Rucka. He wrote some of the best classic '90s Batman arcs, and he wrote the comic that this is based off of. So I was happy to see the comic writer being the screenplay writer for this. The only problem is that comic went on, and their first arc was very much setting up the series, and a lot of people make that mistake with the first movies in what they hope will be franchises. The first movie isn't really a movie, it's a setup for the franchise. And I feel like, had this been a this movie is over 2 hours long, but it felt super short because it was just going through the cliched motions of a starter film. You had just enough to get to know the good guys. You had kind of a very small bad guy who just wasn't that incredible. But the whole point of the story felt like an extended pilot episode of a series, and that you really want to see you really weren't blown away by this movie. You want to see what happens after this movie.
Yep.
um I thought that the characters for the most part was great. I liked Kiki in this, but I had some issues with her character, and we'll get into that in spoilers. But Charlize, to her credit, carries the film. I mean,
Yep.
she is what makes this film great. Even though some of the parts that she's in is dumb to me, um, there was a lot more to like about this movie than not. So it could have been a bomb, but it wasn't. I found it for the most part enjoyable. Enjoyable. Is that the right? Why can't I
Yeah.
speak all of a
Yeah.
sudden?
No, you're good.
Yeah.
All right. Spoiler talk.
Spoiler
So
talk.
that was like, I was gonna say, yeah, you've been warned. Spoiler talk. So that was what I was gonna say. Also as one of my downsides, but at the same time, um, like I didn't want to say it in the non-spoilery part because I thought that it was giving too much information. But the entire movie felt like it was trying to set up a universe, or try and set up, like you said, a franchise.
The
Um,
further adventures of this crew. Yeah.
before the first act was done, I think it was actually during the second act when they were explaining Quinn. Um,
Sure.
and they didn't definitively say that she was dead, I'm like, oh, she's either going to show up later in this film, they're going to go and get her later in this film, or there's going to be a sequel with her in it.
Quinn was the other she was the original fifth person to this group.
Yeah,
She was the
she was Andy's first person that she came
yeah.
across and ended up
She and
getting like,
Charlize's character were big through the years. Yeah.
and to
Although
the movie's
her
credit,
end. Go ahead.
she got literally the worst fate that I could think of for somebody like that,
Yeah.
who like to spend, as they quote in the movie, 500 years just drowning, coming back to life, screaming, freaking out, and drowning again, and
And
then
they
coming back
showed
to
that
life
on
again.
camera. And for I
Yeah,
mean, it's hard to relate to a character that's immortal, but when you see that, that was vicious. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's like terrifying." That is
seeing
like
her, like
they
the
did really
iron
good job
coffin
with
that they
that.
put her in was freaky as hell as it was.
Yeah, yeah. But
Like,
then to put that underwater, oh my gosh. Mm,
and then you realize, like, then like her realization, like they were both like bulletproof until they saw what they were going to do to her, and
right.
they both immediately lost their composure, because like they did a good job of that, showing that there is an extreme vulnerability to these characters, that
Yeah.
first of all, they absolutely still feel pain, and they do not necessarily look at the immortality that they have as a gift anymore.
Hmm.
Like, it's gotten old for them. They're like, you know what, this is ridiculous. Which was the interesting dynamic that Booker and Andy had, to where which led to Booker's plot point in the second half of the movie,
Hmm.
where first of all, like in an action movie like this, where there was kind of like that spying and espionage stuff, and
Hmm.
as soon as they mentioned that the guy was CIA, I'm like, okay, somebody's getting betrayed. Like,
Of course.
that's
Immediately.
that is a standard trope in a movie like this. Somebody's getting betrayed. Somebody's
Well,
doing
and
the betraying.
you see the betrayal in the beginning. Like the first it
Yeah,
shows you them being betrayed, and then 5 minutes later it leads to that very scene. It's like I was like, wow, you just showed us the scene twice.
yeah, and I didn't think that was necessary, but
Yeah.
um, like they could have totally put that anywhere else, but and I think it's the
Hmm.
only part of the movie where she really narrates.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, you're
so
right.
it was just like, that's just really out of place. Like they didn't really need that. Um, but that also opened up the door. The betrayals actually opened up the door for the main inconsistencies that I had with the film.
Hmm.
First of all, okay, so you've got Copley, who is also Baron Mordo, from Doctor Strange,
Hmm. This dude.
and yeah, Chiwetel Ejiofor. I don't know
Hmm.
how to actually say
I
his name.
think I think you said it pretty close. Yeah.
Um,
Ejiofor or Ejiofor, one of those two.
Ejiofor, something like that. I need him to
Hmm.
say it. Um, Kind of like Charlize Theron, like like
Hmm. The
Charlize
Throne.
Theron,
Is it
like, is
Theron? Yeah.
wrong. Like,
Right.
there's some unpronounceable names in this
Hmm.
roster.
Hmm.
But yeah, so you got Copley, who sets him up for this job. He wants proof for this creepy pharmaceutical guy to be like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna give you the money that you need to capture these people, so I can siphon them to like help with diseases. But he's also the same guy who was like, yeah, I've been tracking you guys for forever. Every life that you save leads to millions more. Let's see if I can fuck that up by getting you captured, and
Yeah,
seeing
that
if
was
we can,
his
like,
reveal. That he was revealed to be like their super fan to have collected.
yeah,
Okay, we didn't really give the synopsis of this. Basically, Charlize Theron and her group are immortals. We see them that they've been around since the Crusades and even earlier. They
like,
do jobs.
literally, we don't know how old the main character is. Like, she is
Right,
that old. Like, she
right.
is old enough to where she has been through. I like the one line that Booker actually says, that she has forgotten more ways to kill people than any army will ever learn.
Yeah,
Um,
that's pretty. That was a good line. It
that was a badass line.
And
But
through
so
the
you've got
years, they
these,
have done jobs to to either save people or to get money or whatever. And they had rules of we don't go to the same place twice. But they broke that rule because Copley and said, "Hey, there's these girls that are in trouble, and you're the only ones that can get in there and save them," and then they get betrayed, and it leads to what you were
Yep.
saying. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Booker seems to be the character who is like lining up jobs for them.
right,
And so he gets
right.
in contact with Copley. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it's later revealed in the film that the plan was probably laid out ahead of time already.
Mm-hmm.
But so you've got a Copley who is ex CIA. He's a spook. He's a spy. Like
Mm-hmm.
spook is not a good word to use for a black person, but it is a very common term for a spy, and that is the context that I mean it in. Spooks are CIA agents,
We
ghosts,
got
like
you. We
those
got you.
creepy spies. I
We
don't
got
want
you.
any racist connotations to be assumed because they do not exist.
We got
Um,
it.
but he is telling them that there's these girls, they're being held,
Mm-hmm.
they're not being fed, they're about to be moved, and then we're never going to be able to find them again.
Right.
And so
He plays on
Andy,
their sympathies for sure
yeah,
because he knows
Charlize,
that they'll do it.
Charlize, and it's very clear that they have been away from each other for a while.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't done anything for a bit. They were I don't know if they were laying low. They didn't really go into it. But
They don't all
sh-
just live together for hundreds of
no,
years. Yeah. Yeah.
but Charlize's character, well, except for two of them, Charlize's
Right.
character does not want to do this kind of stuff anymore. She's very jaded with the world. She doesn't believe that there's anybody in the planet worth saving, which for somebody who's lived as long as she has, and she says it in the film too, is we do this because we thought things would get better, but they're getting worse.
Sure.
And like they're seeing the planet evolve through human civilization.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense for her to be kind of like disconnected from uh like the good in humanity because she doesn't get to see it in the line of work that they perform. Well,
Mm-hmm.
they go and they find out that it's a setup, and these dudes with a bunch of guns shoot them all down, and they lay down on the ground, they look dead, and then they come back to life, which we see in the trailer. Like you see the scene in the trailer.
Yeah.
And boom, they're up, and Copley had been recording the whole thing, and he gives it to Dudley Dursley of all people from the Harry Potter movies.
Right.
um,
Right.
it was really weird seeing him, uh, but yeah, and he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna make millions off of this. We're gonna extend the lifespans of human peoples. They're gonna be lab rats." He actually explains them as like lab mice, and
Mm-hmm.
how normally they don't care about the lives of the lab mice, and he doesn't care about their lives either.
Right.
um he looks at them as specimens that are going to help him make millions and millions of dollars, which to me was kind of like a really weak villain motivation. um it didn't it didn't really strike me too well, but
Although his character reminded me of what's his face, that real life pharma guy who
yeah,
went to
Martin
prison.
Shkreli.
Yeah, he just
Yeah,
looked like a
farm bro.
young pharma bro who all he cares about is money. So I mean, he sold me on that. But does that mean he's a great villain for this type of story? Not really.
No. Well, so the old guard is now pissed off about that, and they're kind of on the run. And we also find out that they all can dream of each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they share some level of consciousness. So when Kiki, who's a Marine, gets killed,
Mm-hmm.
she gets her throat slit by a terrorist, and she comes back to life. They all they feel her die, like they have visions of where she is, and so they go out and get them. And she's joining up. She is the new guard joining up with the old guard, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so she's our audience character as well. She is the one who is asked. She is the one who everything is being explained to, which is where
Mm-hmm.
the exposition comes in because there's a lot to explain. Um,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of questions. She finds out that they heal from pretty much any injury. The bigger ones take longer to heal from.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, and that they can die. It's just eventually their wounds don't heal anymore.
Kind of
But they
like.
don't know how long it takes, and it doesn't seem to be an average either. It
Well, yeah,
seems
because
that it
that.
can just drop out whenever, because Andy had a comrade who, like back in ancient times, who had his just give up on him,
Right.
and that threw her and Quinn for a loop. Like they had no idea why that was happening.
Well, and
Um,
also Quinn has been dying every 2 minutes for years,
yeah,
decades. And
so
I
it doesn't
seriously
seem
doubt
to.
these guys have been killed every 2 minutes for the last couple centuries. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of all over the place. There's not like a set. You can only get killed X amount of times. It just kind of
yeah.
depends on whatever. It's
Yeah,
random.
we don't get explained if they've got one up mushrooms stashed somewhere or something. Like we
Right.
don't know.
Right.
Um,
Healing potion. Hurry. Yeah.
but yeah, and so
Mm.
like so you had the first betrayal from Copley, which if he had continued to be the villain, it would have made sense. It would have been fine.
Yes.
But he does
Yes.
not continue to be the villain. It becomes
Mm.
blatantly clear very quickly between his interactions with Merrick, the real villain,
Mhm.
that he is going to turn. Like he's gonna turn back to the side of the old guard and be like, "Hey, we can't do this." And then you find the fanboy wall of fame that he had set up in his house,
Yes.
um, and it's just it was so inconsistent. Um,
Yeah, because if he was such a fan of theirs, and he makes it clear that he is, like, not only has he, it's not just that he's a fan that they're immortals, he's a fan of all the good things that they've done. He has a
yeah,
list of all the good moral things that they've done. If he's able to see that
and the
characteristic,
results.
right, then why couldn't he see the characteristic of the pharma bro? Because that dude did not hide. It wasn't a
No,
big reveal that he was a dick. Like he was a villain from the get-go, and we never see why this dude is working with him. Like
and,
there's no way you would assume that that pharma bro had good intentions.
and he was also able to find out everything about the original five through history, through a group of people who are quoting him, extremely resistant to capture
Mhm.
and hard to track. But he was able to
You
find out
see
a lot
Charlie
of shit about
Theron
them.
even, like, erasing people's phone images because they caught one image of her in the background, and yet
Yeah.
he has, like, a whole wall of
Yeah.
images.
It just like it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
It was a really weird inconsistency.
Mhm.
And so and also like we don't see him again until like the very end.
Right.
So which I also thought was weird. It's like he absolutely needs to pay a price. He needs to help somehow. Um,
Yeah.
but they all like just forgive him at the end. They're like, all right, we're gonna hire you and you're gonna help us
Yeah.
do this
They
thing
kinda
that
make
we
him their Watson almost,
yeah.
like
Like I was just like, what? No. That
yeah.
like and then another
Why?
thing that made me mad is that the one person who should understand why they would not want to be captured gets them captured and
Mm.
tries to just and it was Booker. He sells them out.
Booker sells
And
them out.
he also shoots Andy, who at the time could have been a mortal wound.
Yeah.
Doesn't find out about it, and that immediately flicks his switch back off. He's like, "Oh shit, I didn't want to do that." But he
Granted, he
also
didn't
knows
know,
that.
but yeah. Mhm.
But at the same time, he also knows that Andy has talked to him about not wanting to be an immortal anymore. Like
Yeah.
that gets mentioned there and nowhere else.
Yeah, that was his
Nowhere else.
reasoning, is that this pharma bro could find a way for them to end.
Yeah, they can find a
Uh,
way to cure them of their immortality, basically.
so he's cool with betraying all of them and making them endless lab rats until their potential deaths, just so that they could eventually die, which
But
was
also,
yeah,
why would the pharma guy get rid of their immortality if they are just an endless supply of human test subjects?
yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. Also, if you are testing something on a human being, you don't want it to be on an immortal human being who heals from anything.
Mm,
Like
mm-hmm.
that's gonna
Sure.
fuck with your data a lot too. That bugged the shit out of me. Like that's
But at
not.
least he did get punishment. They didn't just slap him on the
Oh
back and say
yeah,
you're okay. He did get, they gave him, you have to go away for 100 years. You
I
can't be
think
with us,
I think he
which
got off
was like
incredibly
harsh.
easy. I think he got off really easy because if you think about it, he did a lot worse than that Copley guy did because he knew
He
them a
did.
lot better.
Well, he said it himself when he got his sentence. He said, "I was expecting more, but hoping less." I mean,
Yeah.
100 years is still 100 years, but I mean,
But
yeah,
that's
he
a
did get
blink
off.
for these people.
Sure. Well, they don't live faster than us, but yeah, it is. I had a couple inconsistencies as well. I agree with your issues there. Um, my main issue was with Kiki. They brought her on. They introduced you as a Marine, and not only is she Marine, she's like the leader of her platoon, which is
Yep.
awesome. She's the first one through the door. She does the double tap on the terrorist. I mean, he ends up. The only reason she's in that situation to get stabbed in the first place is because he was the one that they needed to nab alive. So she makes a mistake, but I
She's
liked
also
her
trying to
because
like rescue him and does like a
yeah,
brief frisk on him and doesn't find a knife that was as big as the one that he had. I found that
yeah,
kind of
so
hard to believe.
she made a mistake, but I did like how her troop just like like you healed. That's not right, and then basically the Marines were gonna put her in a lab themselves. I liked that setup for her, but I also was like, she's a Marine. That means she can fight. So we don't have to have this group of assassins with a person who's never touched a gun before. That's great. In fact, the next scene we see her in, she's going hand to hand with Charlize, and she gets some good hits in, which is great.
Yeah. It was
Charlize
clear that
beats her
Charlize was not taking it completely seriously at first too.
at
Um,
first, but she was still holding her own. What I
yeah,
didn't like about is after those two scenes, she gets treated and she starts acting like she is not a soldier. Like there's a scene where she and Charlize is standing in the cathedral like garden, and an attack starts and guns start going off. Charlize gets out her gun and she's like ready to go, and this girl's like, "What's going on?" Like she's never heard a gunshot before or knows that this is likely an attack. You hear gunshots, you're a Marine. It just felt like sometimes they forgot that she was a Marine before. And then also, they do a pretty good job of pointing out who the villains are. The villains are the ones going in, blowing people's stomachs open, trying to kill you. And yet they do that tired cliche of the good girl or the good person having an issue with killing the bad guys. So there's a
yeah,
portion in this show where they're like, we're going to go into this, we're going to rescue our friends and kill anybody that gets in the way. And because Kiki is the new girl on the block and the good guy, she has to be the one to say, I don't know if I can do this. You are literally a Marine. You were in combat. This is what you did on a daily basis. And if anything, these bad guys are a lot more black and white than the bad guys you were facing in Iraq or Afghanistan. But we had to go through that thing where she second guesses the group. And that kind of got annoying to me.
I was able to get through that basically because her entire world got flipped upside down, and so she just didn't know what to do anymore. Like
Yeah.
I was able to justify that one uh, away. The thing about her that bothered me was like they tried to give her some sort of conflict about reaching out or not reaching out to her family,
Mm-hmm.
but really, but they really only did it like once. Like
There was not a
but
lot of
but
depth.
they yeah but they like they made it seem like especially at the end that there was going to be a lot more weight to that decision,
Mm-hmm.
and but then it just kind of like they were like no, you can't do that, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, and then also how they explained away her just disappearing, going MIA. It was like, oh, I talked to Copley, he's going to fix it, say that I was killed in action. Like, how? So many people saw that you were alive. so many so
Yeah.
many troops saw that you're still alive. So either the filmmaker really wants us to just forget about that part and just let it go, or that's going to come up in the inevitable sequel that they were obviously setting up, and she's going to have some sort of a conflict with a family member who ends up hunting her down because
Yeah.
because as she states, she comes from a family of warriors. So I feel like that's going to be something that comes up later too.
Yeah.
But that was just annoying because like it all kind of revolved around her phone. Like they tried to make her phone seem like this significant item.
That
Like she
kept on
grabs
coming back. Yeah.
like she
Mm-hmm.
grabs it immediately to listen to music, to have one of the weird music editing choices. So she's got her
Yeah. It
ear,
was
she
weird.
grabs it, she puts her earbuds in, and then she sits down, and that was with
Mm-hmm.
her phone. And then she has the moment with Andy like holding her phone up. It was like, oh, is your mom and your brother or whatever? And then
Mm-hmm.
one more time at the end where she decides not to contact her family. I'm just like, you guys are putting a lot of weight into this phone, but
I, yeah.
like you're really not backing it up enough with enough depth to like really make me feel like I didn't feel for her family. like that's what they were
You didn't
trying to
have a
do, but it
chance
didn't
to. This
work.
movie just
Like,
blew past any chance of depth to that. Like anytime you got, I mean, you got a little depth around Charlize Theron's character and a little chance of depth around her and Booker, but that was really it. Like they just for a 2 hour movie, they wanted to focus on the action and getting to the next point. They
yeah.
didn't really want you to talk about the synaptics of this and yeah, the families and stuff like that. They wanted to get past that.
So that's one of the main things that bothered me about this film and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
films that are coming out now. I
Mm-hmm.
want to see a movie. Like, okay, so let's take one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's films as a placeholder.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the universe was already established. I'll give it that. Like that's an adequate criticism for the point that I'm about to make. But
Mm-hmm.
if Iron Man, like if you'd seen Iron Man 1
Mm-hmm.
and they had decided we're not going to do any more of those, that movie could have standed by itself on its own
Yes.
without any
It was
problems.
it
Like if
was
that was
not
the
a setup for
no,
Avengers. It was an Iron Man movie.
it's
Period.
like they set that universe up over a long period of time. And
Yes.
as far as like setting up a future, like they did it in really subtle nods. Like you
Yes.
had like the hint at Rhodey looking at the the War Machine nod, basically. You
Mm-hmm.
had the post credit scene with Nick Fury, which they didn't need to put in there, but they had the money to do what they were going to need to do.
Mm-hmm.
This movie, however, spent a lot of time trying to set up a universe and made it very clear from almost the get-go that there was going to be a sequel to this film.
It felt
Like,
like a prequel, or it felt
yeah,
like a prelude. It felt like the pilot. It did not feel like the main course.
like
Yeah.
one of the comments that Cece made was that she was glad, like before we watched it, before like as we were getting into it, like she'd seen the
Mhm.
trailer. One of her comments was that she was glad that this was a movie and not a TV show. Afterwards, I was feeling like maybe they should have done a TV show. Like maybe they should have done a series. So the first season, like they could have had a little bit more of that depth.
You
Like they,
and you could have, yeah, you could have had more depth, and this could have maybe been the first 3 episode arc or something like that. But it's clear that they want to tell the story after this, and they just needed to get through this. I did like the other two characters, Joe and who was it, Joe and Nikki, these
yeah,
two guys. I did like that you got a little depth to them and their relationship. I liked that not only have they killed each other so many times, but that they developed a personal relationship. And
a romantic
I don't
relationship
I don't think
between
they're
two people who were,
married, but yeah,
they might
that
as
whole
well
thing
be.
of he's not my boyfriend, he's the love of my life speech was great. I love that. And then it was followed by them killing everybody in the truck. They were great actors. I really liked them. I
I,
wanted more of them.
that
But
was another thing. They had the probably the most interesting backstory to where they killed each other in the Crusades,
mhm,
continued killing each other. Like, and you got their entire backstory and all that you needed to know about them in just the little interactions that you had with them.
right.
Like, they killed each other in the Crusades. They mentioned that they killed each other several times, which also
Mhm,
says that they probably didn't understand why they kept on coming back to life. And so
yeah.
they didn't understand that they didn't need to be like they didn't not
Mhm,
be enemies for a while. Like they went through that shit for a bit, and then
mhm.
they developed the close relationship. So what you ended up getting was a gay couple coming from, oh man, I can only imagine like the fundamentalist Christians who saw that and were like, oh no,
Yeah,
we have to
I
kill
want the
that.
Highlander season with these two back in the
Yeah,
Crusades. I would watch a whole season of that. That would be more
that'll be
intriguing than
hilarious.
this movie.
Like,
Yeah.
and
It'd
also
be
Joe got my vote for the most brutal kill out of the entire movie, where he literally throws the special ops guy over his shoulder and like slams his head, breaking his neck
Oh,
and back into
yes.
the floor.
Oh, yes, that's
Like that
right.
was the most badass kill out of the whole thing.
I
Um,
remember like, "Huh," when that happened. That was a good one.
and
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
was preceded by a great line because he was defending his romantic. He was defending Nikki. It's like, you hurt Nikki. You shouldn't
That's
have
right.
done that. And
That's
like,
right.
and just like this great attitude behind it. You shouldn't have
Mhm.
done that. Why'd you like? It
Mhm.
was almost like he was disappointed for him, not at him, and he
Right.
just flips him over and just folds his neck into his shoulders like an accordion. Perfect. That was the action sequences they did, aside from the a little bit overused amount of shaky cam. They did a great job with the action sequences here.
I've seen worse, but yeah, there was
Yeah,
definitely
there's definitely worse, but
Kiki's kill at the end was nice. She took Pharma Bro right out the window, which
well,
was pretty awesome.
and it was even crazy because I feel like they didn't really need to go any farther after what they had done to kill him. Like, because first of all, I was really kind of upset that they didn't decapitate him with that badass axe that Andy has.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, she's got an axe. They've all got swords. They've like held on to their favorite blades from the past,
yeah.
which is kind of cool. Yeah.
I totally thought that they were going to decapitate him with that, and I really wanted it to happen. And then when the scene came where they like hack it into like kind of like his neck shoulder
Hmm.
joint there, I was like, oh yes, they're gonna. And then immediately I was like, oh no, they're not going to decapitate him. But like he was dead right then and there. But
Yeah.
no, they're like, we're going to take this the extra mile. We're going to drop him out of a car, which is a subtle kickback to what Andy said when they were in the plane, where we could jump out now and we'd survive. So it's
I
like,
did like that. Yeah.
okay, all right,
And
yeah.
hell, if I could do that, if I knew that I'd survive it, I would probably do that. That would be something to experience. I did
So that,
like the choreography with that axe too. When Charlize was really going at it, she got
yeah,
some really
yeah.
good moves with that axe in there. That I was like, oh, that's creative the way you did it. It wasn't just the slashing. She did axe kung fu.
Her case was weird. The case that she had for it was strange. I don't know why it had the weird, like, because you had the slim part of it around the handle, and then that weird bulbous part around the
Yeah,
like.
it's like a
Why did that need to
banjo
be there?
case.
It's still flat. Like what?
It was
It looked
weird.
like it looked like a case for a really weird sitar or something like this. It's like that's
Yeah.
strange. I don't know why you need that. But
The
no, like I said, there was a lot to praise about this movie.
I know we've been bashing on it a lot, but there was plenty of stuff to like.
But now that the exposition is done, like now
Mhm.
that they've kind of set up that universe, I am going to watch the sequel as soon as it comes out and see if they have like if they're putting together a trilogy. Like if they stop
Mhm.
at a trilogy, that would be great. But they have to establish like the main villain for the entire series next, or it's in the second one and it has to continue into the third one, or I
Yes.
feel like the
Yes.
series is going to fall flat, which they might have done already. It would be an interesting premise because another thing that this movie did that I didn't think they should have done, but in hindsight, it might be okay. They did a post credit scene or like a halfway post credit scene.
Mid-credit scene, yeah.
Yeah, mid roll credit scene, which you saw, I'm assuming.
Yeah, with Quinn coming back,
Okay. Yeah. So Booker has been
which you
exiled
knew
for
was
the
gonna
next 100
happen.
years. Yeah. He's been exiled for the next 100 years. So he's drinking his ass off. And he stayed in France, which is where he was at anyway, originally. Like it sounded like
Mhm.
he had, like he died fighting for Napoleon.
Mm.
Um, and then Quinn shows up. And, after hearing her backstory, you're like, okay, she's going to be a little bit pissed off. And, she's going to be really mad at Andy for giving up looking for her. Um, I,
Although Andy did say they did look for her for years.
yeah,
The ocean
it's
is
like,
still a big place, but
yeah,
yeah.
it's going to be kind of like literally all Charlize has to say is like, bitch, you were in the ocean. Like,
Well, I
we're
don't think it's
immortals. We're not submarines. Like, we
but
can't
you
fucking,
I don't think it's a stretch to say, look, we looked for you, but we already know that we die, and so we just figured there's no way you'd survive. Like these people, like that was the big reveal, was that Charlize, who hasn't been dying every few seconds for the past hundreds of years, finds out that she's no longer immortal, that she is. I don't think they should have done that in the first film. I think they should have held on to that for the second film if this is going to be a trilogy. I think
yeah.
that mutes her too quickly. And it shows, like, so the final fight scene, all of her teammates are taking the blows, like they're being human shields for her. Anytime she gets in a position that she might get shot, they jump in front of her. So are they going to do that on every single mission going forward? It just seems like if they did this to her character in the first film, she should be their Watson, not the dude that betrayed them and sold them out to
Uh,
Pharma Bro. You should put her because she at least cares for them and knows them. And she's going to be a liability to the team. And for the most badass character in this show, they shouldn't have made her the weakest one by the end of it. At least not the end of the first one. That would have been an interesting thing to develop over the second of a trilogy if this turns out to be a trilogy. I didn't like that. But yeah,
I think it
if
would have made
she's
more sense if
dying,
they'd healed slower instead of
yeah,
just stop healing completely. Instead of like immediately going from immortal level healing to regular human level healing.
exactly. Like
Like if
she
they had
knows it's
slowed it
coming, but
down,
she's still healing. Yeah.
yeah. Like if they could have established that like right at the beginning. It was like, hey, yeah, I'm just not healing the way that I used to,
That's
or
kind of a
something like that.
warning
Like,
system. You don't just
yeah,
lose it like that. But I
yeah,
don't think it
like
would be a stretch for her to say like, "Hey, I'm dying and I haven't been dying I haven't been killed every couple of seconds for years and decades. So we just assumed you were dead." That's not a stretch to assume, it feels like.
yeah.
I don't like Quinn being the villain, but I guess that's what they're setting up.
It's clear that that's the direction she's gonna go. I mean, she's definitely gonna be insane. If you died 5 million fucking times, you'd be a little pissed off too.
I would be
Uh,
fine if her gripe was not against them, but just against like the human
Mankind,
race.
yeah,
Yeah, and that
human.
would make her the villain. I'd be fine with that. If her thing is all bent on revenge against Charlize, I think that would be dumb. But I'd be perfectly fine with her. Like
So
anybody who thinks they have a moral high ground, she just hates.
I can absolutely see her like wanting to seek revenge for like really kind of wanting to like tear down the human world and be
Yeah.
like humans are not what they should be. Like
Like, oh,
she
Christians are
looks at it
nice
like,
now.
yeah, she looks at it like, oh yeah, the human race cannot claim superiority of any kind, and
Hmm.
she takes on almost like a Magneto role. She's like, we're immortals, we're better than these people, we're gods, and she just wants to kill them all. And
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I think that would be better than revenge against the team.
yeah, and then the team is like getting in her way to try and do things right. But then again, she also sought out Booker, so it was like, all right, what do they?
Right.
How long has she known about them? How long has she been alive? How long has she been watching them? Because Booker wasn't around when she died,
True.
so yeah. Uh, there's questions. This movie can't stand up by itself. There's too many questions. They led into too many sequel teasers, so there has to be more media.
Yeah, we'll see, man. I mean, it sets up that's all it is. It just sets up.
Yep.
And the only we have not heard of any sequel news. In fact, this only sequel news I've heard of Charlize Theron is that they're working on Atomic Blonde 2 for Netflix. I don't really want an Atomic Blonde 2 either. I feel like I would rather see a sequel to this because I liked some of the characters, but I did like it. I mean, at the end of it, I was like, that was fun. It had some good action, but it is one of those things. The more you think about it, the more kind of irritated you get, and and again, I feel like they shouldn't have muted their most badass character. They shouldn't have weakened her in the first movie if this was supposed to be a series. And I mean, then again, who am I? The guy that wrote the comics wrote this movie, and maybe that's exactly how the comics went. And if he's the creator, he can just say "fuck you" to me and everybody else that doesn't like the stuff he created.
Yeah.
But I feel like, usually a movie is a little rushed, but whatever. I do really love Greg Rucka. He's a great writer, and I hope he gets the chance to write the sequel to this.
I do want to give the graphic novel a shot though. Like now that
Yeah.
I've
Oh, me
now
too.
that I've seen this, I want to give the graphic novel a read and see kind of like get a little bit more context. See
Yeah.
how
Ditto.
faithful it was.
Yeah.
Like see if he diverted a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's kind of the overall for what we had going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think our ratings came around the same that a lot of people's ratings were. So the average rating, um, so IMDb was 6.7 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes was 82%. Metacritic was 70%. So yeah, uh, not amazing ratings, but certainly not so like didn't bomb. Like
Hey man,
can't say
in
that
the
it bombed.
time that we're at where we really only get streaming movies, I'm perfectly happy
Yeah,
with this being the level of streaming movies that we got in July.
I was
That's fine by
entertained.
me. Yeah,
I was
I was
entertained.
entertained. Hmm.
Like it moved fast. Like if anything, it moved too fast through a lot of stuff that it should have been able to go slow at, but they wanted to keep your
Agreed.
interest as long as they could. So, um, but
But
yeah,
props to Netflix for continuing to put out content. Like they have been non-stop
yeah,
for months, and in a very heavy world for Hollywood. They continue. They just dropped another trailer that I want to do a reaction on, either with you or just myself after this, that I heard is really good, with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Jamie Foxx,
yep,
called Power Project. I
yeah,
heard
I
that's
saw
really
that.
good. Well, you already saw it then, damn it. But I heard it's
Yeah,
good. So I was
yeah.
gonna do a
Sorry,
reaction to this.
well,
So
I mean, you can. I've already seen it. So,
okay.
uh,
Don't
like,
tell me. Don't tell
no,
me.
no, I won't tell you anything. But I'm interested in it. I think it's an interesting premise. But
Good on
so yeah,
Netflix.
Nerf herders. What did you think of the old guard? What do you think of our casting choices for X-Men? Like, do you feel like that we're like way off base and that it should be these people that you are gonna want to like hit us up with a comment down below? Let us know.
Mm-hmm.
If you like this video, definitely let us know. Hit the like button, give us that information, helps us out a lot. And if you wouldn't mind subscribing so you don't have to worry about missing any future content. Our schedule is still a little bit sporadic right now. So until we come up with something solid, having the subscription and the little notification bell clicked on, that'll help you make sure that you don't miss any of our future content coming out.
Mm-hmm.
We got some gaming stuff coming for you. We've got more podcasts, we've got more videos, and we've also got a Patreon that we're working right now for some extra special stuff that we've got coming out that we're not quite ready to talk about just yet.
Although
But
we already had somebody asking, is there a
yes, we
full
did.
reaction to X-Men? So
So
we're working on it. We're working on it.
there's some clues out there already. But so until next time, like button, subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. See ya.
See ya.